Hello, I'm Gordana Radonić. I'm here to introduce you to a new exciting project within Graphisoft community, Graphisoft Talks Podcast. We would like to bring you conversations with people who are creating software and work daily on different bits and bobs of bringing Archicad, BIM Cloud, BIMX, DDS CAD out on the market. We would like to introduce you more to the processes behind software creation and to people who work in Graphisoft. We thought that the best way to do so is to actually have a conversation with one of our passionate customers, longtime Archicad users. So we invited Nathan Hildebrandt to be the host of this Graphisoft Talk podcast, and Nathan is here with me today. I would like to introduce him. Hello, Nathan. How are you?
Hi, Gordana. It's great to be with you today and participate with you on this new exciting project and being able to put this podcast series together.
So Nathan, many of people know you from Graphisoft community, from Archi Intensive event, from your podcasts, but what is it all that you do? Is there a single job description that describes what you are doing?
That's a really interesting question, Gordana. I have to ask that question to myself every day when I wake up. The practice that I have now is called Skewed, and in Australia here I'm a registered architect. So predominantly my practice is founded on the practice of architecture, but because of my unique skill sets, I have a very strong interest in undertaking other things as well. I'm heavily involved in delivering events, and not only my own events for Archicad users, but also in other industry groups that I volunteer with. Here in Australia, we've got an event called Built ANZ, which I've been part of for the last 7 years, and we're delivering major events, with the multi-stream, 500-600 people attending. Also, currently the chair of Brisbane, which is a free event that's hosted in one of the local universities at QUT here. And we've been part of that for the last decade, and we've just finished delivering our 52nd event. And, the other day I was speaking with my web developer, and he just said, maybe I think it's time you change your career to events and media because of all of the things that I'm doing out in the public space. But, from my perspective, it's about kind of sharing the knowledge that I have with the community so that overall we grow as an industry. I want architects to succeed, and seeing the profession kind of falling away and losing ground to other people within the industry is quite concerning. So hence why I don't just practice architecture, but I also kind of contribute and consult to other practices in Archicad and BIM processes as well. So yeah, I'm a mixed bag.
I think that's why not many people know that you're actually a practicing architect.
I know.
Because of all the activities that you do out there on the internet, all the events that you are creating yourself or participating at.
It's one of those things that I haven't really kind of been out in the public so much with. Up until 4 years ago, I was a director at Fulton Trotter Architects, and I'd been at that practice for just under 17 years. So the work that I would have done there was quite public. You could see when you go on the website the type of projects that I was part of and delivering. And since I left that practice and started out on my own, I haven't had the projects or the caliber of projects completed to actually demonstrate or put out to the world that I'm practicing architecture. But over the next few months, my website's being updated, and all of the beautiful projects that I've been able to work on over the last 4 years will start to be in the public space. So people actually see that there's more to me than just Archicad events and BIM knowledge. There's actually 20 years or 2 decades of architectural experience and projects behind me as well.
Great. And I think it's always interesting to ask any architect, how did you decide to become an architect?
Yeah, it's exciting, this one. And I have been fortunate enough my whole life to have been on construction sites. So my father was a plumber, and most people around the world would understand how dirty that job is and how challenging it is. So I've been fortunate enough to be on site and assisting my father from a very young age. And there's a common joke that I kind of like to use with people is that, I didn't want to become a plumber and I decided to become an architect because I didn't want to handle that stuff, which we won't use because we'll keep this as a PG rated podcast or interview. But the thing was I knew from a very young age I wanted to be an architect. I used to sit there and draw plans of tree houses, of cubby houses. I feel very fortunate that I knew from a very young age that that's what I wanted to be. And then I began that journey through school and started into university. So, the university journey was a little bit bumpy, but we got there in the end. And I'm really grateful that I've spent the last 2 decades within the industry and practicing.
So the other question that we always ask everyone who is using Archicad is, when did you start using Archicad first?
Yeah, this one from my perspective was I guess the turning point for me in my university days. And the key thing is that I was studying second year architecture at QUT, and one of my lecturers or one of my tutors said to me, Nathan, your hand drawing is really, really poor. You're going to need to find a new way of communicating your design work in class, otherwise you're never going to succeed, you're going to fail. So I was sitting down and caught up with one of my other kind of fellow students, and he worked for a major practice here in Brisbane at the time, and they were on Archicad 6. So in the evenings after university, we'd go to his office and we would do our university work together. And we'd sit there, and that was the introduction. It was essentially Archicad saved my architecture degree, I guess you could say, because I couldn't communicate very neatly, I guess you could say. A lot of people say all architects can draw, but, I think I was the one that probably couldn't draw that well. So Archicad essentially was the savior to enable me to communicate effectively with the tutors and got me through my architecture degree.
I understand exactly what you're talking about. And what is it that you like about the software the most, or using software in architectural practice?
The really important thing from my mind is how holistic it is. And going back to the roots of when Graphisoft and Archicad was first created, a lot of the tools were actually developed by architects for architects, and I know that these days that's kind of taken a slight shift with the product taking a broader stream. But from my perspective, I think the one thing I liked about Archicad when I first started it was that it was intuitive. As a tool, it is kind of well versed in being able to take a project from the commencement all the way through to the end. And that's one thing that not many other tools on the market actually do very well. There's a lot of other kind of tools that need to plug into other tools to enable practices to be able to deliver the same outcomes that you can with Archicad. So from my perspective, I think it's about a tool that kind of gives you more than what other tools are available out there. And I think that'd be kind of the foundation to it. The key thing to remember from my perspective, from anyone's kind of views on the world when it comes to being an architect, is knowing that you can't just have a single tool in your toolbox. You do need a variety of tools in your toolbox as an architect to deliver a project. In the past, you had more than just a rotary pen. You had, set squares, you had a table, you had, tracing paper, all of these different things. And today you see a lot of people kind of reluctant to take on extra tools. They want everything within Archicad, and I think that's an expectation. I think that's a little bit too grand. Like we'll sit here and this will be recorded, and then it'll get edited on an Adobe package. Any audio recordings I do gets edited on an Adobe package. I use Enscape all the time to do my rendering because it's quicker. So the thing is that for me, it's a tool that's enabling and connecting to others as well. So, it has to have that connectivity to make it work, and Archicad does that for me quite well.
But if we're talking in general about architectural practice, so you mentioned that it's not about using one tool. So if you're talking about software tools in general, why are they so important in your opinion for architectural practice nowadays, especially?
These days, the things that are causing the greatest challenges within the architectural profession is essentially risk, right? So we need to de-risk our projects, and we need to de-risk them in several ways. So first of all, we need software or tools that can make the delivery of information more efficient. So we need to be able to do things faster because fees are getting tighter. Here in Australia in particular, salaries are getting higher. So therefore, with all these costs increasing and our fees not increasing at the same pace, what we're seeing is that we're needing to be able to do things quicker. Now, the problem is when you're doing things quicker, you then need to have this scenario where you can actually trust the tools that you have to make the information connected. You need to have that information connected and coordinated, because the other risk that we face is that information that leaves our practice is uncoordinated. If the information leaves our practice is uncoordinated, then we actually face the risk of being sued because the information isn't accurate or it isn't right. So that's where, once again, tools like Archicad are there to make that process of delivering things faster, delivering things that are accurate and kind of have a single point of truth. They're the two things that are really important. But then the final piece of the puzzle is about clear communication and the ability to communicate effectively with all stakeholders that are part of a project. And the key thing to remember with this component is that not every single person on a project is able to read a set of architectural drawings. So you need to have a suite of different ways in which you can communicate information to different stakeholders so that they understand what the project is going to turn out like. They need to know before it's built, because the cost of changing things during design is actually cheaper than it is to change it during construction. So once again, it's about those opportunities. And to be honest, I guess the final thing, if we want to keep going on the list of things that I think are really important about software, is it's about trying to create a point of difference to your clients. The market's really competitive out there. There's a lot of people that are vying for, architects that are out there vying for work from different clients. So you need to put together a point of difference and a journey that is delivering greater value for your clients. And if you aren't delivering greater value for your clients, then they're going to find someone that is. So for me, even though right at this point in time I am functioning as a sole practitioner within my business, and I do collaborations with a lot of different firms on different projects, I still treat my business like it's a big business, like when I was at Fulton Trotter. I make business decisions on purchasing tools or software or hardware purely off the fact of can I make more money by implementing this tool into my business, and that's the way I focus and how I work. It's not going, I'm a sole practitioner, I'll spend more time to do something rather than actually investing in a tool or a product that's going to make my life easier or drive greater value for a client.
Okay, thank you for elaborating on that. Let me ask you a bit more about Archicad. So it's also a very typical question for any Archicad users. What was your first Archicad version that you started with?
So I started with Archicad 6, and for me at the time, it goes back to the days of Plotmaker, and for me that was a interesting time, having two separate pieces of software to control, the modeling and the documentation output, and then seeing obviously all of that change with the introduction of Archicad 8.1, I think it was from memory, when they incorporated the layout book in. Was it 8? I can't remember. It's hard to remember when you've been part of it for so long.
I can imagine. And do you have any favorite Archicad tool?
Oh, a favorite tool. To be honest with you, I actually don't have a favorite tool. There's things that I've really enjoyed that have been developed within the software and the tools over the last decade. There's been so many things that I've been really excited about. The fact that, building materials have been implemented into Archicad. I'm a bit of an attribute nut. If people haven't actually met me before, I think they should know that the things that I'm fixated on is about information. It was really exciting, a decade ago, getting in there and being able to model a building that replicated what the physical building would look like. And now it's the last decade for me has been very focused on how to have consistent information. So I'm very excited about attributes. I'm very excited about information being attached to elements and having that single source of truth. And then also the exciting thing that I find, which is probably really boring for most people, is like, the IFC translator. It's not the most exciting piece of the software, but it is a feature or a kind of component of the tool that enables us to collaborate effectively with other stakeholders and other products and other tools that they're using to do their job in the way that they want to as well. So it's probably the most unique answer you'll probably get to that question. And I know that, you ask anyone else that question and they will say a specific tool, it's just what they do. But whereas for me, it's more about the kind of the side that controls the outputs, controls the way information is handled within the software. I actually didn't mention interactive schedules, but as much as you can love them, you can hate them, right? It's kind of one of those funny things where there's so much greatness in them, but then I'm just like going, oh, I just wish it could do this one more thing.
Nathan, can you tell me what are your thoughts about Graphisoft user community? I don't mean only about Graphisoft community website, but I mean the connection with other software users, how that has been important for you over the years.
So for me, I began my journey back in the year 2001. And at the time, I was a student and I didn't really have anyone to connect to. I taught myself how to use the software so I could get through university. Then when I started at Fulton Trotter in late 2002, they were on an AutoCAD practice. And then in 2003, 2004, they transitioned over to Archicad. So for me, I knew the most about Archicad within the practice. So I automatically became a CAD manager at the time. And that's what the terminology was. Now, it was only until 2012. So we're talking a span here of about 11 years. 2012 when we were first invited to attend a KCC in Budapest. I, as a user, was very introverted. I basically didn't go out and interact with any other users at all. And after going to KCC in 2012 and getting to see the presentations from other users from around the world, it was where Rob Jackson and I first met, for example. And, Rob and I, are talking to each other, every other week. We get to learn from one another. And from my perspective, if you're going it alone, you only can go so far. And the problem is that you don't know what you don't know. So the reason why since 2012 I've been driving how I use the software as hard as I can, but at the same time going out and sharing with the community and trying to build community. So because of all of the conferences I've tried to put on, trying to bring people, to Archicad users together. With Brisbane, we're not just bringing Archicad users together, we're bringing together the whole of the AEC industry. What's going to happen is that, and this is a really interesting kind of analogy that my former business partner in Paul Trotter uses quite a lot, is that when you're on a sailboat and you're racing, if you're by yourself, you have no idea how fast you're going. But if you have another boat beside you, you know whether you're going faster or slower than your competition. So there's so much benefit in being able to, I guess, test ideas with your peers. Talk to them about how you're using the tool. Yes, some people kind of get excited about competitive advantage and IP and all that sort of stuff. But if you sit down and talk about how you're doing something, you could find that you're doing it completely wrong. And from my mind, I think that's actually the more important part, right? So you could be doing something that could be costing your company, thousands of dollars because you're actually doing it wrong. Whereas if you sit down and share with people how you're working, They could sit down afterwards over a drink if that's your choice. If you're not, your choice could be an orange juice. But you could sit down and have a conversation and say, if you just tweaked what you're doing and did it this slightly different way, you would find that you're actually going to get that efficiency that you're trying to achieve. And one of the other things that I find really important about trying to build communities is that when you have people that are like-minded, it's like sporting clubs. It's the same thing. People can sit down and talk to one another about some of the challenges that they're having within their businesses, and it becomes a bigger conversation than just about how they're using Archicad. It becomes a broader discussion around how the industry is faring. How can we as a team of people assist one another to make the profession stronger? And I think from my perspective, that's what's really, really important about bringing communities together. And that's why I invest so much of my time and give so much of my time away to the industry, because I think it's important. I think it's really important to help people learn. I think it's really important to bring people together, because how much fun is it when you're with a group of people that have a shared interest rather than being all by yourself and lonely? I know which one I prefer.
So since we are talking about people, you and I, Nathan, had a lot of conversations prior to starting this podcast project, that it's important to hear out people behind software making. So why do you think actually that it's important to get to know people behind the software making too?
So for me, in any kind of business arrangement, I think that more successful outcomes occur when you actually understand where people are coming from. You understand what makes them tick. You understand their personality. You understand how they live. Like from my perspective, I think any kind of business transaction I undertake, I've always taken that kind of personal approach to the way in which I engage with people. It isn't just about business and having that business transaction. It's about having that conversation afterwards, having a beer together, having a drink together, having a meal together. It's the approach that I've taken with everything that I do. And it's really difficult for users of Archicad to know who's behind the software. And I think that Graphisoft do a really great job in putting together content that talks about the software, how the software works, how to use the software. And yes, you do see occasionally figureheads as part of the building together events. But from my perspective, I think there's a lot more compassion that people can have when they actually understand the people that are actually behind the software, and having conversations with them about what their role is, how software actually is developed. And from my perspective, that's what I think this whole series is about, and exciting from my perspective, because I want to know who makes Archicad. I want to meet the team. I want to know who the team are. And over the years, I have had the fortunate opportunities to have very good long-term relationships with several people from within Graphisoft. And I have to say that not a lot of users have that opportunity that I've had. And go and visit, Graphisoft employees and visiting their families and meeting their families in their homes. Not a lot of people get to do that. So from my perspective, a global market, a global organization, let's have these conversations as part of a podcast series. Let the users get to meet people from different areas within the organization, understand, some of the cool things that they might do as a hobby that they might relate with. It might mean that, when they're interacting with them on, Graphisoft community or as part of the Insiders program, they might actually kind of have that commonality and understand that, everyone out there is actually trying to do some great stuff. Graphisoft's a very big organization, a lot of people behind it. But if we can introduce the community and the users to a few of those people, I think, to me, that's kind of a great starting point.
And you mentioned in one of your answers earlier that you have visited Graphisoft office here in Budapest. So how was your experience? I guess that was the first time when you got to know some people who are working in Graphisoft. What was your experience and how did that look like?
to be honest with you, it was a really great experience, and Graphisoft over the years have definitely known how to put on a party, and cheers to the events team. Frazina and her team have done some great stuff over the last decade that I've been involved with. But the first time I actually visited Graphisoft was actually back in 2012, and that was for the KCC event over there. And my son was only 5 weeks old at the time, so it was basically, I think, 50 hours of travel both directions and 80 hours on the ground in Budapest. And at the time, we did go out to visit Graphisoft Park at the time, and I think we made it over there. But I think that day, for some unknown reason, there was a bomb scare. And it wasn't a bomb scare in Graphisoft itself, it was just Graphisoft Park. But we actually didn't get the opportunity to go through the building that day. But I was really fortunate in 2014, and this was at the time where I had developed my kind of workflows and brand new template off the back of Archicad 17, hence the T-shirt I'm wearing today. And I was actually invited to have the opportunity to present as part of KCC 2014. So it was great to be back in Budapest again in 2014 and actually spend a day with the team. And, before I talked about the idea of sharing, I built this template up in 2013 and actually gave the whole template to Graphisoft headquarters, and the product team got to see how users like myself were using the Archicad and the workarounds that I was developed to try and deal with bottlenecks that the software had at the time. And because of the fact that I was able to share real life working experiences with the team, they have always been open-armed and sitting down and talking with me about how I use the software. But it also meant that there were so many features and little kind of adjustments that were made to the software off the back of that amount of sharing that I did. So for me, the office is a great place. They're really friendly people. That's the thing that I think that makes a difference. And the one thing that I've often said to people, and it's a joke that I had with Victor Varconi back in the days, and I remember I think sharing a beer with him in Las Vegas at the time when there was another Graphisoft event run in Las Vegas in 2015, and having beers with the Graphisoft CEO, and I kind of joked, well, you can't do that with Revit. And even to this day, I when I was in Las Vegas in 2019 and had the opportunity to meet Hugh, and Hugh had actually started on as, and the transition between Victor and Hugh had occurred, and Hugh had been in place for 6 months, and it was great to share a beer with Hugh in Las Vegas then as well. So from my perspective, I think the Graphisoft way has always been very warm and welcoming to me. And I think that's, I don't know, maybe it's the way I approach the Graphisoft team in terms of, compassion. I don't know. People say other things as well. I don't know. But the other, from my perspective, I think that it's always been a pleasure, and I've always felt welcome. I've always felt valued. And to me, I think as a customer, and that's essentially what I am. I'm a customer of Graphisoft. I think that's the most important thing, right?
I'm really glad to hear your good experiences, despite we tried to scare you with the bomb at your first visit here.
Well, they were trying to say stay away. I don't know.
Okay, let me ask you a bit, I want to go away from the Archicad and architecture topic and to ask you this, because I happen to know that you like music and DJing.
I don't think you can tell so much from what's going on in the background here, but no, it's something that I've been really passionate about for my whole life, and it's something where, dance music has essentially kind of been the core, I guess, behind me, and being a bit crazy and being able to listen to dance music at 8 o'clock in the morning, much to the kind of disgust of other people that sat around me, because, how can you listen to something that's so up-tempo at this time of the morning? And I think from my mind, it's about the fact that I kind of just always had this kind of Energizer Bunny approach to life where I like to keep going. in all honesty, it's taken a back seat. The DJing side of things. It was something that I actually got to do a lot of when I was a lot younger, in my teenage years. But being a family man, it has to take a back seat sometimes. And I've got this really exciting, massive box full of CDs from one of my mates who's is still a professional DJ today, and he's gone. He's moved completely to digital. So I'm sitting there going, I've got to get the CDs out and start playing, and finding a weekend where you can just play music all weekend. So it's disappointing that sometimes different priorities in your life kind of mean you have to put things to the side. But the positive thing is that the music never goes away.
That is true. And is there anything else you enjoy doing, just in the light of getting to know you better?
I think the problem I have is I have way too many interests. I think that I get excited by something and then I'll kind of chase it to the nth degree. Some people probably don't know a little bit, for the people that don't know about my kind of craziness. So I was fortunate enough for people that are in kind of cricket playing countries. As a young child, I was actually fortunate enough to get a hat trick. For the avid golfers out there, I've actually succeeded in getting a hole in one. And back now 13 years ago, and I don't look this anymore, I actually completed an Ironman triathlon. So there's a few different kind of sporting sides that I take an interest in. But probably I'd say to suggest, there's a few kind of things that are hidden behind me in my shelves that kind of indicate some other things that I have strong interest in. And, there's a specific football team that I'm quite passionate about here, which is a sport that's unique to Australia in Australian rules football, or AFL for short. But, if you jump onto YouTube, for those that are not Australian based or Gaelic footballers that may have some sort of interest or understanding of AFL, jump onto there and see how cool that sport is and how unique it is compared to any other sport in the world.
Thank you for sharing all these insights about you. I think it's very important that the audience get to know you as well before you start introducing Graphisoft people. As a host of this podcast and in this first episode, I would like to ask you, how do you see this Graphisoft Talk podcast evolving? How do you see it in the future, or what you would like it to be?
Well, there's a few ideas that we both have brainstormed. And from my perspective, I think, first of all, what's most important is, introducing people within Graphisoft to the users, and via the massive power of social media that's out there today, and platforms that enable people to watch and hear our conversations today. But also, moving to the future, it's about kind of getting a bit more in-depth understanding of people that are using the software, understanding how they're getting most out of the tool. What are the things that they're doing that might be unique to the way in which they're working that other users could kind of benefit from hearing and understanding. So for me, I think it's going to be a journey. And I think ideally it'll be something that, morphs and based upon how, what people find interesting, we do more of. It's kind of, the positive is that it's not locked in stone, right? We can kind of take it on a journey in a way that kind of aligns with kind of what people are expecting or wanting and really enjoy, instead of kind of just delivering something that people don't get excited by.
Thank you very much, Nathan, for this conversation. I really hope that listeners of this podcast will enjoy the conversations and what you will bring in the next episodes.
Well, Gordana, it's been great to sit down and share a little bit about myself with the audience. But now that I've got you sitting right here, I'm going to make you first cab off the rank. I think that it's perfect. I'm very grateful for the time that you spent with me today to interview me and introduce me to the Archicad user community that may not have met me before. But, I think it's really important now to sit down and have a conversation with you.